On May 11, 2021, a team of inspectors climbed underneath the I-40 bridge in Memphis and found a crack that had torn through almost the entire steel beam holding it up. They didn't call a supervisor, they called 911. Within hours, one of the busiest freight crossings in America was shut down in both directions. The crack had been sitting there in plain sight for years. The bridge was saved. It was repaired, reopened, and it still carries traffic today. But here's the strange part. Right now, Tennessee and Arkansas are spending nearly $900 million on a brand new Mississippi River bridge. And it's not to replace the one that cracked. It's to replace the aging bridge sitting right next to it, a bridge that never failed at all. This is the story of how a crack in one bridge nearly cut the country in two, and why it's now rebuilding another a few miles down the river. Every piece of freight moving between the eastern and western United States passes through a handful of critical bottlenecks. Memphis is one of the biggest. The city is home to the FedEx Global Super Hub and sits on a stretch of the Mississippi River that carries billions of dollars in commercial barge traffic every year. Interstate 40 runs straight through the middle of all of it, connecting the eastern and western halves of the country through Tennessee and Arkansas. The Hernando de Soto Bridge, commonly called the M Bridge because of its distinctive double-arch silhouette, opened in 1973 and carries I-40 across the river between West Memphis, Arkansas, and Memphis, Tennessee. I-40 runs coast to coast, from Barstow, California, all the way to Wilmington, North Carolina, and the Memphis River crossing sits on one of the busiest stretches of that entire route. On any given day, more than 40,000 vehicles cross the M Bridge, roughly a quarter of them heavy trucks hauling freight. What made the situation so fragile was simple. Memphis has only two interstate crossings over the Mississippi, the I-40 bridge and the older I-55 bridge, which sits about 3 miles to the south. After that, the next nearest crossings are roughly 71 miles to the north and 54 miles to the south. So when the I-40 bridge shut down, everything funneled onto that older I-55 bridge, the same 1949 span that was never built to absorb the load. Hundreds of barges backed up on the river below, waiting to pass. Heavy trucks piled onto city streets in West Memphis, turning residential roads into makeshift freight corridors. The Arkansas Trucking Association estimated the closure was costing the trucking industry more than $2 million a day, and more than $70 million before it was over. The bridge stayed closed for nearly 3 months. Eastbound lanes reopened on July 31, 2021, and westbound lanes followed on August 2nd. Millions of people had driven across the M Bridge over the years, including loaded semis hauling freight coast to coast, without knowing what was growing underneath the road. To understand why that crack mattered so much, you need to understand what holds a bridge like this together. The M Bridge is what engineers call a tiered arch. Think of a bow and arrow. The arch curves overhead like the bow, and a long steel beam running underneath the bridge deck connects the two ends, just like the bowstring. That bottom beam, the tie, is what keeps the arch from pushing outward and losing its shape. If the tie fails, the arch has nothing holding it in compression. The whole structure can unravel. And on the M Bridge, those tie beams are what the industry calls fracture critical. That term means everything rides on a single member with zero redundancy. If it breaks completely, the entire span can come down. The crack had formed at a welded joint deep inside the steel box beam. During the original fabrication around 1970, workers made 2 wide botched weld repairs in the same spot, leaving hidden cracks sealed inside the steel before the bridge ever opened to traffic. Over the decades, the constant pounding of traffic and the stress of cold winters spread the hidden cracks in stages, slowly, invisibly, until they had torn through nearly the entire beam. When the inspection team found it on May 11, they recognized the severity immediately. 2 of the 4 steel plates that make up the box-shaped tie beam were completely fractured, and a third was partially cracked. Only 1 plate was still intact. One of the inspectors told the 911 dispatcher they had found a supercritical defect on the I-40 Mississippi River Bridge.
We just found a supercritical finding that needs traffic shut down in both directions on the I-40 Mississippi River Bridge.
Another called minutes later and said they needed to shut traffic down in both directions right away.
We need to shut traffic down on Interstate 40 crossing the Hernando de Soto Bridge in both directions.
Within hours, the bridge was closed. River traffic beneath it was halted. Engineers later concluded that a full failure of the tie beam would have been catastrophic, with the structure at risk of a collapse with thousands of vehicles on it. People drove across that bridge every single day without knowing how close the structure beneath them was to giving way. The only reason this is remembered as a close call and not a disaster is that someone was looking that day. The story shifts here from a near miss into something harder to explain. Fracture-critical members are supposed to receive hands-on inspection every single year. That means a person physically climbs up to the steel, close enough to reach out and touch it, and checks every surface for cracks. It's the highest standard in bridge inspections, and it exists specifically because there is no room for error on members like the M-Bridge's tie beams. So how did a crack this large go unnoticed? When RDOT reviewed its own drone inspection footage from May 2019, the fracture was clearly visible on camera. It had already developed to a significant size 2 full years before anyone raised an alarm, and it may have been there even longer. An amateur photographer who paddled a canoe beneath the bridge back in 2016 took a photo from the river, roughly 120 feet below the deck. In that image, what appears to be the same defect is visible on the tie beam. That is at least 5 years of annual inspections during which the crack was sitting in plain sight. A detailed forensic analysis by Wyss Janney Elsner Associates later traced the warning signs back nearly 4 decades to a 1982 ultrasonic test that flagged a defect at the exact same weld and labeled it as harmless slag. The flaw that would one day nearly drop the bridge was on record for 39 years. RDOT fired one inspector, Monty Frazier, on May 17, 2021, just 6 days after the discovery. After a federal review, the state overhauled the leadership of its bridge inspection program. But the response from the public and from the engineering community focused on something bigger than one person's failure. If a single set of eyes was the only barrier between tens of thousands of daily drivers and a potential collapse, the system itself had a gap that went well beyond one inspector. The fallout reached far past Memphis. On December 13, 2021, the Federal Highway Administration issued a formal action memo referencing the I-40 bridge and requiring every state department of transportation in the country to perform ultrasonic testing on weld joints in similar fracture-critical bridges. The memo warned that failure to comply could result in liability for any state DOT if a comparable structure failed. One missed crack in Memphis changed how America inspects its bridges. The I-40 scare exposed a problem that went deeper than one cracked beam. When all that traffic diverted onto the I-55 bridge during the closure, it put the region's only backup crossing under a spotlight. Because here's the thing about that backup. The Memphis, Arkansas Bridge opened in December 1949, a span so old it predates the interstate highway system itself. It carries around 48,000 vehicles a day on its own, and it was never built to modern earthquake standards. That matters because Memphis sits directly on the New Madrid seismic zone, one of the most active fault systems east of the Rockies. In 1811 and 1812, the New Madrid fault produced a series of earthquakes so powerful they temporarily reversed the flow of the Mississippi River. A major earthquake along the same fault today could hit both bridges simultaneously. The I-40 bridge has been seismically retrofitted to withstand a significant New Madrid event. The I-55 bridge cannot be cost-effectively upgraded to the same standard. Engineers determined it would be cheaper and safer to build a replacement from scratch. So that is exactly what they decided to do, replace the bridge that never failed before it ever gets the chance. So in 2024, the Federal Highway Administration awarded Tennessee and Arkansas nearly $394 million through the Bridge Investment Program, part of what officials call the single largest transportation investment in Tennessee's history. Tennessee and Arkansas each committed an additional $200 million, bringing committed funding to roughly $794 million, with the full project cost estimated between $800 million and $1 billion. The replacement has a name now. In 2025, TDOT and RDOT named it King's Crossing, a tribute to Memphis royalty. The name honors civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., blues pioneer B.B. King, and the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley. And the bridge itself is being designed to match the scale of those names. King's Crossing will be a cable-stayed bridge with 6 lanes and wider shoulders. Its main span, which doubles as the shipping channel for river traffic, will stretch 1,412 feet, wide enough to give vessels far more room than the old bridge ever allowed. The entire structure is being engineered to withstand a major New Madrid earthquake and is designed for a 100-year service life. According to Parsons Transportation Group, the firm leading the design, the deep, soft soils of the Mississippi forced an unusual, lopsided design, with the taller of its two towers on the Arkansas side rising 525 feet above the river. That's taller than a 40-story building, and taller than the towers of the Brooklyn Bridge. By the time it opens, King's Crossing is projected to handle approximately 64,000 vehicles a day by 2050, a third more than the I-55 bridge it replaces carries today. Design renderings were released in November 2025, and the project cleared its federal environmental review in April of that year, when the FHWA issued a finding of no significant impact. There is a detail worth noting about who is building it. Kiewit Infrastructure South Co. was selected as the construction manager in March 2025. That is the same company that mobilized emergency crews within 72 hours of the 2021 crack discovery and performed the roughly $10 million emergency repair that got the I-40 bridge reopened 83 days later. The firm that stitched the famous bridge back together is now building its neighbor's replacement. But King's Crossing is not under construction yet. Final design is scheduled for completion in December 2026, with groundbreaking targeted for February 2027. If the timeline holds, the bridge is expected to open around 2031. When it does, the existing I-55 bridge will be demolished and removed. Until King's Crossing opens, Memphis is still relying on the same two crossings that nearly failed the region in 2021. The I-40 bridge has been repaired and is back in service. After the 2021 closure, crews replaced the fractured steel and went back through the rest of the bridge's critical welds, reinforcing the trouble spots they found. The bridge is likely safer now than it has been in decades. But the I-55 bridge beside it is still that same 1949 span, never designed for the seismic threat sitting directly beneath it. And the fault it sits on hasn't gone quiet. If something were to take one of those two bridges out of service again tomorrow, Memphis would be right back where it was in May 2021, one crossing short of functional. For at least 5 more years, the city is running its entire cross-river lifeline on a patched bridge and an aging backup. The vulnerability that one crack exposed has not gone away. It will stay real until King's Crossing opens around 2031 and finally gives Memphis the modern, earthquake-ready redundancy it has needed for decades. On May 11, 2021, a team of engineers made a call that probably saved lives. They saw the crack, understood what it meant, and refused to wait for paperwork or protocol. Every person who crossed the M Bridge that morning made it home because someone chose to act before the system told them to. 5 years later, that decision is still reshaping American infrastructure. Federal inspection standards have been rewritten, and 2 states are replacing a bridge that carried the region for 75 years with one designed for the next century. What do you think? Should the engineers who made that 911 call be formally recognized for what they prevented? Drop your answer in the comments. Subscribe for more MegaBuilds stories.